All right. Well, hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the News Project Live on GNAT-TV's Facebook page. I'm Andrew McKeever, the news director at GNAT-TV's News Project, and it's a pleasure to be back with you again this Friday, June 18th. Just wanted to bring you up to date on some of the stories we've been following this week and looking ahead to the coming week. First off, I guess the biggest local news story, anyway, I think. Would be the fact that BOMA, the nonprofit organization that was formerly based in Manchester and was originally developed by Kathleen Colson, a resident of Dorset, received a $10 million donation from uh, philanthropist Mackenzie Scott, the former wife of the founder of Amazon, Jeff Bezos. She has been giving away huge chunks of money from her family fortune, I guess you could call it, and so 10 million of that found its way to BOMA's checkbook, and of course that qualifies as a bit of a game changer for that philanthropic organization, which works with women in Eastern Africa, mainly Kenya, um, to help them start their own businesses and just sort of make a better life for themselves and their families. The gift is by far the largest donation that organization has received. It was said in both in articles in the Bennington Banner, Manchester Journal, and now today in VT Digger. It's also unrestricted, meaning that BOMA is free to use it any way they want. A huge help for that organization. And again, it came as something of a total surprise to them. They weren't expecting that. The organization is today primarily based in Washington, D.C., but still has a lot of local roots here. And we're hoping to do a bit of a story about BOMA ourselves next week uh, when we have a chance to sit down and talk with some of the folks involved in the organization. Uh, Basically, they started off kind of working one on one with women in Eastern Africa, but beginning in 2018, they sort of pivoted to focusing on teaching their methods to other nonprofits and working with governments, and apparently this $10 million donation will help grow those efforts. Currently, there are about 50 to 60 women in Africa enrolled in its 2 year long Rural Entrepreneur Access Project, where they receive a business trainer from a mentor in their community, and the program helps them set up a new business. So, kudos to BOMA, kudos to Mackenzie Scott, who is now in the middle of a second round of giving away nearly $3 billion to various philanthropic organizations around the country. A really fascinating thing as to what she's doing, giving money out to a lot of nonprofits and organizations that don't ordinarily kind of get a whole lot of attention from the major donors who might have the financial wherewithal to help at that level. So I guess last year, many of you will remember, the Vermont Food Bank received $9 million from Mackenzie Scott, and that was part of a round of gift giving where she gave away, I think nearly, about $5 billion to almost 400 different organizations. Um, and she is now in the middle of another round of roughly $3 billion to more. So great for BOMA, great for Mackenzie Scott, and I'm sure that money will be put to good use. The second item I just thought was kind of interesting, one that just kind of emerged earlier this week. But many of you will remember hearing about the American Rescue Plan Act money, or ARPA money, that is going to be coming to Vermont on two tracks. One goes direct to the state government's budget, and the other is going to be distributed to towns and also to counties. Um, all the local communities around here are in line to get some of that money. It's based on population. The confusing part of it is the county part, because here in Vermont, as we all know, County governments basically are limited to courts and county sheriffs. Their operating budgets are pretty tiny. They don't really do much outside of the judicial or law enforcement realm. Uh, and it was widely assumed that that money that was slated to go to counties, which in other states, the county governments are actually, actually do stuff or do a lot more stuff, I should say, than the courts and judicial work that we see them do here. Um, but apparently not so fast. According to the U.S. Treasury, word came down, I guess, at the end of last week or maybe the beginning of this week that no, that money is going to go to the counties, or is supposed to anyway, and that's got our legislators and also the Vermont League of Cities and Towns um, working to make it clear to the federal officials that uh, that may work in New York or other states where county governments are substantive, but here that's not the case, and that money should go, or at least be passed through the counties and then fed on to the town governments because the county budgets are relatively tiny, and they would wind up with way more money than they would know what to do with. So stay tuned, I guess, is the word there. It's just one more bureaucratic glitch, I guess, but kind of an interesting little holdup here because there is a fairly substantial amount of money that will be coming to the towns through this ARPA program track, and it will definitely, I'm sure, be put to good use in all of our respective communities. So more to come on that for sure. Um, Also, kind of on the semi state level, earlier this week, we were pleased to tape a program with three of our area state representatives. Representatives Kathleen James and Seth Bongartz, and David Durfee, who represents Shaftesbury and part of Sunderland. We had a long talk about the legislative session that just passed, and kind of talked about what got done and what got didn't, what got put off until next year. Um, Obviously, coping with COVID and the economic recovery, and how some of that federal money is going to be spent, on broadband or affordable housing, childcare, those things. Were all part of the conversation, along with coming to grips with the pension problem that the state is facing to some of its state employees and teachers. Um, was a large part of our conversation there. So it is up on our website right now. That's GNAT-TV.org. You can catch it there. Um, and I think you'll find it kind of interesting, a little kind of analysis of what we saw the legislature doing during this unusual session. And of course, it's not quite over yet either. The part of our conversation is about the veto override session that's going to be beginning on Wednesday, the 23rd of June next week, and probably only a 2 day session. But they're going to be talking about two bills that the Governor Phil Scott vetoed that would have allowed for non-citizens in the towns of Winooski and Montpelier to vote in local elections. Kind of an interesting question in many ways, and anyhow, I think you'll find the conversation pretty interesting. So, if you have a chance, hop over onto our website and check it out. Also, the town of Dorset is hosting a series of site visits to a site off of Raptor Lane, which is off of Route 30, just past the J.K. Adams store. Um, the town is hoping to move its town hall from its current location in East Dorset over to the Raptor Lane site. They have one picked out, and on Wednesday night of this week was the first of what will be three site visits. The other two will be held the next two Wednesdays, so that's the 23rd and June 30th, both at 7 p.m. Town officials want folks to come out and see what they've got in mind and give give them your feedback. So you can also do that through a survey process that's posted on the Dorset Town website. You can fill out a survey both for your ideas about whether or not that's a good site for the proposed new town hall, and if so, what the former site in East Dorset, which used to be a school, um, should be perhaps repurposed for. So certainly interesting. We're hoping to go on to check out that site visit next week, next Wednesday, and we'll have a longer news segment for you at that point. While I'm thinking about it, just a reminder, if you want to drill down a little bit further into some of the things we're talking about here on our program today, you can go to the comments section. And there we have links to other more information about some of these stories, and where you can kind of kind of go a little bit further into whatever the subjects are. So check out the comments section if you have a minute. If one of these things is something that you'd like to learn more about. Okay, moving on from there. Coming up in a few weeks, July 11th, will be Lucy Prince Day in Sunderland. Lucy Prince, as some of you may have read recently in the Bennington Banner and Manchester Journal, was an African American who lived in Sunderland from, we believe, roughly 1797 to 1821. And her distinctive, well, there are a couple of distinctive things about her, but one of them was the fact that she wrote a poem in the 1740s about um, well, a raid, I guess, is what is commonly described, staged by indigenous Americans on some of the European settlers who were trying to carve out some land for territory for houses and towns near Deerfield. And so the poem titled Bar's Fight was published eventually, much later, in the 1850s. But it remains the very first piece of literature ever published by an African American. And so it's kind of distinctive. It was handed down from generation to generation over that century or so between the time she wrote it and when it was published. Um, so to make a much longer story short, Lucy Prince and their two youngest children came to live in Sunderland in the late 1790s. She had to go through a bit of a legal hassle to retain rights to her property, which were accrued to her through her husband, Abijah Prince, who, in a fascinating twist of history, was one of the very first proprietors in Sunderland when Sunderland was being carved out, along with all the other towns in Vermont in the early 1760s. Uh, Abijah Prince, who had bought his own freedom, then bought his wife's freedom, Lucy's freedom, um, was one of the original proprietors in Sunderland. He acquired a lot, and it was always unclear all these centuries later exactly where that lot was. And a group of local residents have been kind of digging into that and came up with a pretty good idea as to where that actual lot was. And we'll have more information about that on a segment which we're working on right now, and we'll be ready sometime next week. So July 11th will be the 200th anniversary of Lucy Prince's passing, and whether or not she was actually buried in Sunderland is still another question that no one's precisely figured out. She also lived for many years in Guilford, Vermont, over near Brattleboro, with her husband Abijah. She might be buried over there too. Uh, Town records in both towns are a little inconclusive around all of that. So, anyhow, kind of an interesting little historical piece there. The town may have an event of some sort scheduled to mark the occasion, and so we'll be staying tuned on that one too. Kind of an interesting, like I say, historical piece that at this point many people haven't heard of or may have forgotten about. Um, on a kind of a bit of a related note, today, of course, is Juneteenth, or actually tomorrow will be Juneteenth, June 19th, and it is the newest federal holiday. Many of you have probably already heard of this. It enshrines that date as a day to commemorate the end of slavery in the United States. President Biden signed the bill authorizing this on Thursday, and so it's going into effect today. It primarily affects federal workers and schools. They are closed today, and um, yeah, so hopefully, if you're trying to do some business with the federal government today, it may be kind of more difficult than normal. Uh, anyway, it basically stems from the fact that on June 19th in 1865, uh, right at the end of the Civil War, a Union general arrived in Galveston, Texas, and issued a proclamation saying that all slaves were free at that point. This is before the passage of the 13th Amendment, which formally ended slavery. And that was the final act of the Civil War, I guess. So June 19th became a day that was marked as the end of slavery and has now been enshrined as a formal federal holiday. So, before we go, one final note, real quick. Today, the Arlington Village Farmers Market will be opening up. It's going to be at the Arlington Rec Park from 4 to 7 p.m. So, if you haven't had a chance to stock up on fresh veggies and other local produce, you've got another opportunity this afternoon. Um, they used to be over in the front lawn of the Arlington Inn, so you'll want to head up to the Rec Park instead today. We put together a little segment about the new location for the Arlington Farmers Market, along with a roundup of some of the other farmers markets in the area. And you can also catch that today on our website at, like I said, GNAT-TV.org. All right, we'll leave it there for today. Hope you have a great weekend coming up, and we'll see you again next week. I'm Andrew McKeever, the news director at GNAT TV's News Project, and it's been a pleasure to be with you. Have a great day.